Welcome to the Kimberlite webinar that take a comprehensive look at the perforating and completion fluids market. My name is David Batt, President of Kimberlite Research, and I'm glad you're able to be with us today to view this webinar. These webinars are provided as a professional courtesy and a thank you to the many oil and gas operators around the world who participate in our industry studies. In past webinars, we've discussed many oilfield services from drilling services, hydraulic fracturing, interventions, wellheads, and subseas. Most recently, we took a deep dive into the artificial lift and production chemicals market. Let us know if any of your colleagues would like access to these prior webinars, and just email us and we'll get those over to you. Also, we often collaborate with many oil and gas operators around the world. We provide customized presentations for their organizations as needed. Let us know if you would like access to a customized presentation, and we'll be glad to arrange that. Today, we'll be taking a look at the wireline perforating TCP markets and the completion fluids market and see how the suppliers stack up, both large and small. For those of you that are a little bit less familiar with Kimberlite, I'll give a brief explanation, then dive in. We conduct about 3,000 one-on-one phone interviews with oil and gas operators around the world each year and collect their feedback that they're experiencing on the various oilfield service technologies. For any oil and gas operators watching this webinar who participate in our industry studies, thank you for your participation. Half of our research is international, half is North America. Through these 3,000 one-on-one phone interviews, we produce a series of industry reports covering formation evaluation, drilling, subsea, completion, and production, artificial lift, interventions, and such. Today, we'll be covering perforating and completion fluids. The results and findings that I'll be sharing with you today are based on recent interviews with 273 completion engineers and managers globally, representing 170 E&P operators. And some of the performance trends I'll be sharing with you today from 2017 through 24 are based on over 3,000 customer interviews and over 55,000 performance review ratings on the various suppliers. The data set's rich and multidimensional. In this exhibit, we cross-plot oilfield service companies' supplier performance on the horizontal x-axis versus pricing competitiveness on the y-axis. This value map, as we call it, or quadrant map, gives a graphical representation of the competitive landscape. Any oilfield service company provider, based on customer reviews, that plots in the top right is viewed as a premium offering, cost more be worth it. Bottom left, discount provider. Bottom right, value advantage. And top left, any oilfield service company provider that's plotting in the top left, value proposition is being challenged in the eyes of the oil and gas operators or the users of their services. This creates an opportunity for the service supplier to improve performance and move to the right to get performance more aligned with pricing, or to adjust pricing down to get back into the fair value fairway. As an oil and gas operator, many of you know I'm a former Chevron employee from the 1980s. You always look for the oilfield service company suppliers that you believe will deliver best value for your project. You'll soon learn that there's a multitude of options of oilfield service company suppliers, and each of the suppliers have respective strengths and weaknesses. Certainly, as an oil company, you're trying to avoid service suppliers that plot in the top left-hand quadrant, if at all possible, and you're looking for suppliers that can meet your specific needs, either fit for purpose as a discount provider, or a premium provider, cost more be worth it, or a value advantage provider. So with that, let's dive in. When you take a look at the forward market, talking to the completion engineers and managers for perforating services, what we find is that 56% of the international land oil and gas operators and 64% of the offshore oil and gas operators expect their expenditures for perforating to increase over the next 12 months going into 2025. Conversely, the North America land operators, the majority, 64%, expect their expenditures to remain effectively steady or consistent over the next 12 months as it's been for the past 12 months. The diffusion indices is relatively flat for North America land at 53 versus it's still quite healthy internationally and offshore at 76 and 82 respectively. When you take a look at the sentiment trend here, as we show for perforating services over the years with interviews with completion engineers and managers, what we find is that North America land expenditures did sharply decline with the decline in gas prices, but has since moderated. International growth is strong, but the rate of growth is declining. And international market is still strong as well. When you take a look at the market macro for U.S. land on the left, we're well on our way to drill 14 to 15% fewer wells in 24 versus 23. But the fundamentals are set to improve in 25, where we're projecting to only drill 1 or 2% fewer wells in 25 versus 24. Keep in mind that the U.S. land operators are also extending the length of the laterals on average by about 3% per year. So in 25, if we extend the length of the laterals by 3%, like we're doing this year, footage drilled and footage completed in 25 should be on par with that of 24. The Canadian market remains relatively healthy as they have new takeaway capacity, which is leading to measured growth in the Canadian market, nice and steady, mid-low single digits year on year. When you go international and offshore, what you find is that spending growth is expected to increase about 7% internationally and 9% offshore. But when you look more closely using our new market forecast model that we released last week, the market forecast model takes into account price, activity, mix, and competitive adjustment to predict what the market growth will be, as well as each of the various oilfield service company suppliers' projected growth. When you take a look at directional drilling as a proxy for completions, because you need to drill a well before you complete it, and you look at offshore here at the top of the screen, you'll see that growth is about 9% projected for 2025 versus 2024. But when you analyze this and look more closely, you find that the majority of the growth is with price adjustment, not so much with the activity adjustment. Similarly, we see a very similar correlation of international, where the majority of the growth is price adjustment versus activity adjustment. Naturally, in North America land, as we noted, market's expected to decline 1.5%. Globally, we see growth of about 4.7% globally for drilling and subsequent for completions going into 25. Some suppliers, such as SLB and Halliburton and Baker Hughes, are positioned to grow at rates a little bit faster than overall market growth. If anyone's interested in this market forecast model, reach out to Kimberlite. We have capabilities to provide these types of market forecasts for other product lines, including hydraulic fracturing, ESP, chemicals, liner hangers, and so forth, as you see here on the screen. Back to the market macro really quick, what we find in U.S. land is we continue to produce more oil and gas at lower activity. This has never been seen before in the history of the United States, but through drilling, completion, and production efficiencies and the use of new technologies, we're able to accomplish more with less. Naturally, we're drilling longer laterals and completing more frac stages. And not only are we doing them more quickly and efficiently, we're doing them with technology that effectively yields greater productivity out of every wellbore, such as what we'll be talking about here in a moment with oriented perforating and self-oriented perforating guns. As a consequence, in U.S. land lower 48, we expect rig count to be relatively flattish going into 25, maybe gain some rigs due to gas, but overall down 1% year on year. So let's turn to pricing. When you take a look at pricing for perforating services based on interviews with completion engineers and managers, what we find here is in international land in the middle and offshore on the right, 2/3 of the operators, 69 and 66% respectively, expect pricing to increase, average 6 to 7%. When you look at North America land, however, you see more of a segmented market where some operators are expecting prices to decrease, some increase, and some are expecting prices to remain flat. Again, very similar to what we presented in the hydraulic fracturing report just a couple months ago, you see differentiated technology, differentiated performance, differentiated service quality among some oilfield service company suppliers who are able to maintain discipline on pricing and drive pricing up. For example, in perforating. For operators that start to use the adoption of self-oriented perforating guns, the cost per gun may go up $30, $40 per gun. They may spend $30,000, $40,000 more per well on perforating guns than with just a traditional integrated gun. But even though they spend $30, $40, $50,000 more in perforating guns on the well, they're going to complete the well more cost effectively, faster, more efficiently. So the frac costs go down, the chemical costs go down, the water costs go down, and they improve the productivity of the wellbore. They get more production. So the net economic benefit to an oil and gas operator is, yes, of course, you want to spend more money to use the self-oriented perforating guns if it's going to yield all these other economic benefits, where you invest $1 more in perforating and you get multiple dollars back in return. And that's what I'm talking about the use of innovation and technology to be able to accomplish more with less. We see this in hydraulic fracturing as well. Companies like Halliburton with electric frac fleets and Liberty Energy with dual fuel frac fleets and NextTier and so forth have differentiating technology and service quality to where they're able to charge a little bit more. Halliburton, in a very soft hydraulic fracturing market, has actually expanded their margins by just under 3% in 2024 in a very soft market. Frac suppliers that are principally conventional diesel-based naturally are going to be under more pricing pressure. So you, as an oil and gas operator, really need to identify what technologies and service quality do you need in order to fulfill your jobs to deliver best return for your shareholders. You have many options. Let's turn our attention to ESG real quick. Overall, ESG sentiment remains very strong international and offshore, a little bit more moderated in North America land amongst the completion engineers and completion managers that we interviewed for the perforating report. Most completion engineers and managers believe that Schlumberger is best suited and best positioned to help them meet their ESG objectives. If I step back for a moment and take a look at all the ESG interviews that we've conducted at Kimberlite from 2021 through year-to-date 2024 across all of our Kimberlite reports, regardless of its drilling, completion, production, subsea, or formation evaluation, what we find is that the ESG sentiment is highest internationally and offshore. U.S. land declined quite considerably going into 23, and it has moderated a bit. And most of the focus and investment in ESG is around the E, emissions monitoring and reduction, as you can see at the top of your screen. Carbon capture is also quite notable. Other areas cited, because this is an open-ended question, the operators can say whatever they would like, but clearly reduction of flaring expenditures and electrification fall up under the emissions category. So some of these are interrelated. If you take a look at the total, all Kimberlite reports combined, SOB has a 2-to-1 lead as being best positioned, is meeting operators' ESG objectives, particularly amongst formation, evaluation, and completion, and also particularly amongst the national oil companies and the major oil companies. And Baker Hughes also has strong standing with the national oil companies. When we ask the completion engineers and completion managers, transitioning back to perforating here for a moment, what technologies need to be improved in perforating? The North America land operators talk about improvements in performance, fewer misfires, more reliable tools, more consistent charge. International operators talk about deeper penetration, as well as offshore operators talk about need to be improved deeper penetration along with better technical support. What we find, though, when we pierce more closely into the findings from the operators interviewed, in the U.S. land Permian, what we find is that the use of oriented guns, particularly the self-oriented guns, are really providing the biggest impact, positive impact on operations. And that self-oriented guns is a technology that operators are planning to make greater use of. So for any one of you operators that think for a second that this market's completely commoditized and it's 3 bids and a buy, we don't see any evidence of that. We see differentiating technology and rotary steerable systems to be able to drill curved laterals or curves or even laterals in a single trip without a single run, without having to trip out of the hole, saving immense time and money. Same thing with these self-oriented perforating guns, allowing operators to have more efficient frac jobs, lower cost on the frac job, get the high horsepower charges, lower water, lower chemical expenditures, and better production. Now, if we dive in really quick and we take a look at the perforating gun and shaped charge market in more detail, for which we have a complete dedicated section in our reports. And again, to any oil and gas operators, if you want to delve into this more on a customizable basis for you and your region around the world, just let us know. But overall, in U.S. land, the number of guns per stage has been increasing as we shorten the guns, And consequently, the number of shots per gun has been decreasing because the guns are shorter. We see this in U.S. land and Permian Basin. Consequently, what you find is that the total shots per well are declining, even though we're drilling longer laterals, but the number of guns per well is increasing. The adoption rate of integrated gun systems is strong. You can see on the right-hand side, the rapid adoption, not shown here, is 2018 and 17, where it was kind of growing 30, 40, 50% and just kind of took off to where now it comprises 90+% of the guns. What's new, however, is the use of oriented guns. We used to use weighted bar systems, but weighted bar systems would get kind of tangled up as we were drilling these longer and longer laterals. So now what we're finding is the use of self-oriented guns and oriented guns in general continuing to increase. And you can see the rapid growth from 23 to 24 with the projected growth. Operators say they're able to reach pump rates pressure faster so they don't get the high horsepower charge, less pump time. So say you save 10 minutes per frac stage and 60 stages at 600 minutes. That's basically half a day saved in pumping. Less water, less chemical, and improved production levels. The integrated gun market's about $1.4 billion. It's grown from about 400 million for integrated guns in 2020, the depths of COVID, to about 1.3 billion. So strong growth there. In terms of the suppliers for shaped charges and the suppliers for perforating guns that the oil and gas operators see as leaders, Hunting Titan, Geodynamics, and DynaEnergetics are really viewed as leaders for shaped charges. Internationally, SLB leads, followed by Halliburton. When you move for perforating guns in North America land, what you find is that Hunting Titan, SWM, has a heavy focus in the Permian Basin. SWM is really focused on the self-oriented guns and has grown very fast due to their successful gun technology. DynaEnergetics, Geodynamics, Halliburton, and Wellmatics from GR Energy are also well represented in the eyes of the operators as having really good differentiating gun technology. Again, Schlumberger and Halliburton lead internationally. When you get into the United States land Permian Basin, what you find is that the E&P operators and the service companies have a heavy preference for SWM because they got the early lead. But you also see Hunting, GR Energy, Wellmatics, XConnect, DynaEnergetics, Core Lab, Yellow Jacket, and Halliburton also fairly well represented. Net story, just like rotary steerable adoption is growing because you can drill the lateral in a single run without having to trip out, saving time and money. The use of oriented perforating guns is growing because it saves time, saves money, and improves production. Again, that's one of the contributing factors among many that's leading to the United States to be able to produce historic levels of oil and gas, never seen before in the history of the United States, at historic low levels of rig count in the drilling of wells. In North America, about half the time, the oil company plays a very active role in selecting guns and shaped charges, and the other half of the time, they kind of defer to the wireline service supplier. Internationally, however, the oil and gas operators really tend to defer towards the service companies to make those decisions. Really quick, if we look at the market image, brand image of leadership on technologies of the big four oilfield service providers for perforating technology, what we find is that Baker Hughes stands out for being a value advantage provider. Halliburton's customers, as seen by the 0% line, view Halliburton as very strong technologically, but their image of leadership doesn't really propagate or extend beyond their customer base very far, with the exception of tubing conveyed perforating, which is an area of strength for Halliburton. Schlumberger's market brand image extends strongly beyond their customer base. Users and non-users of Schlumberger view them as the technology leader for perforating across all of these factors, as well as being the premium supplier that costs more but worth it. And Weatherford's viewed as a value-based alternative. So when you sum it all up on the market brand image, what you find is that SLB clearly has the strongest market brand image for technology leadership, followed by Halliburton in second place. Weatherford and Baker Hughes are best viewed as being lower cost, value-based alternatives to that of SLB. Diving into the wireline perforating market and the customer reviews and the competitive dynamics, when we asked the oil and gas operators in North America land, who do you use for pump down wireline perforating? What we find is that the North America land operators on an open-ended, unaided basis cited 44 different suppliers for wireline perforating. Naturally, there's several options for the oil and gas operators to use for wireline perforating. Very fragmented market. When we look at the share of spend, what we find is that Liberty Energy, GR, Halliburton, and Nixtier in aggregate comprise about half of the market. A host of other small suppliers make up about a third of the market. When we talk to the oil and gas operators and you provide customer review ratings on those wireline providers that you're using on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being excellent performance and 1 being very poor performance, of these 7 performance measures: responsiveness to needs, equipment quality, reliability, competency of field service personnel, technical support, availability, operational advantages, and pricing competitiveness. Based on the reviews from the users, the oil and gas operators, completion engineers, and managers around the world, there's quite a bit of variance in the performance of the various suppliers. In fact, if I use our Kimberlite interactive dashboard over here, and I put this on North America land, and I do a performance trends over the years, you can see that the customer review ratings for responsiveness to needs have been improving every year. And Halliburton's customer reviews, who historically have been well below industry average, have been improving every year, along with GR Energy's customer reviews that tend to meet or exceed industry expectations. And then Liberty Energy, who acquired the OneStim assets, have improved every year. So really good trends there for the industry. That's what we like to see. When you look at equipment quality reliability, again, Halliburton is improving as they continue to advance their technologies and automation. GR Energy, very strong reviews. Liberty improving as well, having taken over the OneStim assets. However, when you get to competency of field service personnel, here you see Halliburton's consistently getting customer reviews in North America land that fall well below industry expectations. But again, as Halliburton continues to invest in automation, it should help take out some of these performance deficits moving forward. If you take a look at GR Energy, field service competency tends to be a strength for them relative to Halliburton. And you can see how Liberty Energy, when they acquired the OneStim assets, had several performance deficiencies to address. And they have taken measured efforts to improve overall performance. And you can see now that Liberty Energy's customer reviews for field personnel competency is really near one of the highest in the industry at 8.71, well above Halliburton at 7.73. My point taken is, when you look at the competitive landscape on this value map, you'll find that several suppliers are viewed as delivering really strong value. Liberty Energy, GR Energy really stand out as performance leaders, but some of the smaller providers, be it Silvertip, Allied, Wireline Group, Pentel, Ranger, and Renegade, are also viewed very, very favorably. Again, as an oil and gas operator, you have many, many choices. If I were to go into the software and start to filter this by different regions, be it the Permian Basin, the Eagle Ford, or Marcellus, Rockies, Bakken, and so forth, you very quickly begin to realize that some of these suppliers have strengths and weaknesses in one area versus another area. So please feel free to reach out if you're an oil and gas operator to try to understand who are some of your better options for consideration, to do due diligence and get to learn the strengths and weaknesses of the oil field service suppliers to best serve you. One of the things to take a look at in U.S. land is about 37% of the time, the oil and gas operators will bundle the perforating with hydraulic fracturing. Halliburton does the best job of integrating their perforating with hydraulic fracturing, followed by Liberty and Nixtier. ProPetro, who has purchased Silvertip, has not yet fully integrated the Silvertip organization into the fracturing operations, as evidenced by the very low integration based on voice of customer feedback. When you take a look at the competitive position of Liberty's frac and perforating, they're both viewed as value advantage and very accretive. Halliburton's frac and perf are also viewed very similarly. If you were to filter this by the Permian Basin, both these dots would move solidly into the top right-hand quadrant, because that's where Halliburton exhibits its greatest strengths, is in the Permian Basin. If you take a look at Nixtier, Their frac performance continues to improve year on year very nicely and currently viewed as a value advantage frac supplier. Perforating competitive position has declined, so opportunity for improvement. ProPetro's frac and Silvertip's perforating are very much value accretive, but as I pointed out earlier, for some reason the integration has not been full because this would indicate that based on voice of customer reviews, ProPetro frac customers should be using more and more Silvertip rather than other suppliers, which apparently they are. Moving internationally and offshore for perforating, we find that Schlumberger leads market share, both international land and offshore. Schlumberger is viewed as the premium provider internationally and offshore, and the operators see differentiated value. Pay more, get more, pay less, get less, but all the suppliers amongst the big three are viewed as delivering fair value. When you go back to the international land market for a moment, you'll see that Weatherford and Halliburton are well positioned for growth. Turning to tubing conveyed perforating, which is principally conducted internationally and offshore, what we find is that this is a market that's really led by SLB and Halliburton. Offshore, you can see SLB and Halliburton have basically very similar market presence as it relates to share spend. We see a lot of variety in ratings amongst the various suppliers. There's no evidence whatsoever in our Kimberlite voice of customer research that all oilfield service company suppliers perform at the same level. Just as I shared with you earlier for North America land for perforating, we see quite a bit of variability amongst the various suppliers. And so it's very incumbent upon the oil and gas operators to do proper due diligence and to understand if all you're going to take is 3 bids in a buy, you go for the lowest price, there's a strong possibility you will not end up with best overall value. When you take a look at tubing conveyed perforating at international land, again, Schlumberger is the premium provider whose pricing strategies are out of alignment with their performance profile. Whereas, again, you see Halliburton and Weatherford very well positioned for growth. Baker Hughes is a discount provider. In offshore for tubing conveyed perforating, you see Halliburton well positioned to benefit from the growth in the offshore over the next 1 to 2 years. Baker viewed as a discount provider. Let's turn our attention to completion fluids really quick, and maybe let's start off in the Gulf of Mexico, where Halliburton Baroid is a market share leader, followed by Tetra Technologies. We do see performance review variances amongst the various suppliers that we talked about before. In the Gulf of Mexico, though, Tetra Technologies consistently gets customer review ratings better than the industry benchmark average, reflecting how customer-focused Tetra Technologies is. And we see that year in and year out on the completion fluid performance. When you look at the competitive landscape, you find that Halliburton Baroid is the leader in the market as it relates to market share. But Halliburton Baroid does not exhibit leading performance to the right or pricing leadership. Normally, a leader in a market, similar to what I was showing you with Schlumberger for wireline perforating international and offshore, would be in the top right-hand quadrant. Instead, Tetra Technologies, as I just showed, really has the leading performance in the eyes of the users in the Gulf of Mexico for completion fluids. This reveals that Halliburton's meeting expectations, which is good, but they're not leading the market in customer experience levels or performance, which is not so good. Halliburton seems to be leaning on price in order to help offset their performance shortcomings. When you move international, you see MI Swaco, SLB, and Halliburton, market share leaders, followed by Baker, but you see Newpark, albeit smaller, gaining some exposure and presence. In international offshore, clearly MI dominates the market, followed by Halliburton and Baker Hughes. Again, we see variability in the performance, requiring the oil and gas operators, be it international land or offshore, to do their proper due diligence to identify which suppliers are delivering best overall value. When you go to the value map for completion fluids in international land, what you find is that MI Swaco is very prominently positioned as the premium provider, Newpark viewed as a value advantage provider, and Halliburton and Baker Hughes well valued and well aligned in pricing strategies and performance, delivering strong, good value, fair value in the eyes of the operators. SLB's pricing strategies, however, are not aligned with the performance profile, and they're at risk of defection of customers seeking better value down to Halliburton, Baker Hughes, and Newpark. Similarly, in the international offshore market for completion fluids, you see differentiated value. Pay more, get more, pay less, get less, but everyone's delivering very strong value, with Schlumberger's value proposition being the most challenged in the eyes of the end users, but generally pretty good. Internationally and offshore, many oil and gas operators will bundle together the drilling fluids and completion fluids into a common fluids package. When you look at this, looking at our drilling fluids report that was published just a little bit earlier this year, international land, MI Swaco Schlumberger has a competitive edge over Halliburton Baroid on drilling fluids and completion fluids. But when you move to the offshore market, you'll find that the performance profiles are very much aligned in the eyes of the end users. And really, Halliburton is viewed as delivering best overall value. If you look at this more carefully in international land, you'll find that Halliburton here at the top has some supply chain concerns in the eyes of the oil and gas operators, international land, whereas Schlumberger has less concerns and a little bit better favorably positioned on the customer reviews in the international land, reflecting the fact that in international land, SLB is competitively advantaged relative to that of Halliburton. In the offshore market, however, what you find is that SLB and MI Swaco down here at the bottom has some supply chain concerns, and basically Halliburton has a competitive edge over MI Swaco in the offshore market for the combined fluids market for completion fluids and drilling fluids. So to kind of wrap up what's going on here, overall, the market's fairly fragmented, particularly in North America land for perforating. And I see opportunity for some thoughtful consolidation in the marketplace. So it'll be interesting to see that. With consolidation, we should be able to see better scale and efficiency and investment towards automated perforating and automated pump down perforating. Since completion and drilling fluids tend to be a little bit more integrated in the bundle package internationally and offshore, thoughtful consolidations would add a little bit more optionality as you move around the world in a fragmented market for fluids. So the trend towards, the E&P operators have been consolidating, yes, and that will probably continue. But we need to see a little bit more consolidation with the oilfield service suppliers so that we can get balance sheets capable of investing in next generation technologies, just like what's happened in the hydraulic fracturing market, where the big four frac suppliers comprise 75% of the market share. Operators have plenty of choice, but those big four frac suppliers have the balance sheets to invest in next generation electric frac fleets, Tier 4 dual fuels, and just digital frac of the future. In closing, as we kind of look ahead to 2025, we see the markets as being fairly healthy at good activity levels. U.S. land will continue to focus on operational excellence and execution, as demonstrated earlier, how we continue to produce historic high levels of oil and gas at historic low levels of rig count and drilling activity. Price remains a factor, international and offshore. The availability of qualified equipment and personnel remains tight, international and offshore. And then overall, we as an industry need to work together and collaborate together. We need to maintain some discipline, focus on safe execution, and maintain a discipline at the rate at which we add supply to match the growth in demand. Demand's growing year on year. We're just becoming more efficient as an industry and bringing supply to the market. In terms of upcoming market updates that we have at Kimberlite, next week we'll be publishing our updates on formation evaluation with reports on open hole wireline logging, logging while drilling, mud logging, and coring, sidewall coring, and conventional barrel coring. And then later in November, we'll have our reports coming out for cementing services, cementing tools, surface wellheads, and liner hangers. So be on the lookout for those reports. And then in January, as we kick off the new year, we'll be publishing our integrated reports for the Permian Basin report, Middle East report, Gulf of Mexico, and just an overall performance review of how the big four oilfield service companies, Schlumberger, Halliburton, Baker Hughes, and Weatherford, stack up geographically and across their portfolio of offerings. I want to thank you for listening to this webinar today on perforating and completion fluids. I'd like to thank all the oil and gas operators who support and participate in our industry studies. Please reach out if you have questions regarding any information regarding these two product lines or other product lines that are of interest to you. And if you would like to have a customized presentation to you and your organization, just reach out. We're glad to do so. Remember, as an oil and gas operator, the more active and collaborative you are with your oilfield service company supplier, or your partner, if you will, the better off you'll be. You'll be able to recognize that so many of these oilfield service company suppliers have so many distinctive strengths and weaknesses that if you work together, you'll be able to come out with a better outcome by working together. Thank you for your time today, and have a great day ahead. Bye now.